In an old and extremely corny Bob Hope comedy from about 1963 entitled Call Me Bwana, Hope and an entourage of about 100 porters and gun bearers are deep in the heart of Africa trying to get to a lost U.S. moon capsule ahead of the Russians. A Soviet agent disguised as a missionary priest and his two thugs are just one step behind the Hope caravan. The good guys group comes to a fork in the road, and Hope, who's never really been to Africa before, goes off to the left. 20 yards later, the road comes to a dead end as they meet with an impenetrable jungle. Undeterred, Hope calls out his 100 troops, and they begin to hack with machetes a path through the dense foliage for their jeeps to go through. The Russian spies, just behind the nearest tree, scratch their heads. Why'd he go that way? Come on, we'll take the easy road. They smile to themselves, turning off to the right. They go just a few yards and then pull onto a beautiful paved highway that goes right toward Bob Hope's destination, while the hapless American is still back in the weeds, hacking away for dear life. Well, it's a totally ridiculous scene, so silly that you laugh in spite of yourself. But you know, it truly does remind me of our very human reaction to so many of life's problems. So far in this series, we've been defining what faith really is. Together, we've learned that the very best Bible definition of faith is just one simple word: trust. Faith and trust are virtual synonyms. Have faith in God, trust in God, which is all well and good, until a scenario comes along where we believe in our hearts that God Himself now faces an impossible challenge. How can He possibly solve this problem? There's no way He can do it. So maybe we should start chopping our own little dirt road through the jungle. We find a couple of stories like this in the life of a Bible character who actually is described as a faith champion. His name was Abraham. God, as you recall, had promised Abraham His protection and His abundant protection and blessing, in fact, almost an exclusive blessing. Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. Well, that's pretty good assurance right there. I will take care of you, Abraham. You haven't got to worry about a thing. But let's just take a look 8 verses later in that very same chapter. Abraham, heading down to Egypt during a time of famine, says to his wife, Sarah, darling, when we get there, tell everyone that you're my sister, because you're so beautiful that if they think I'm your husband, they'll kill me in order to get their hands on you. Now here's a man who'd always trusted God to come up with a plan until this crisis. This was too big for God, apparently. God could provide protection out in the desert, where your only enemies were bears and lions and scorpions, but here in town, well, God was going to need some help. And so Abraham said to himself, well, you know, she really is my half-sister anyway, so I'm not actually lying, not exactly. Do you see how our eagerness to help God can lead us down the slippery slope of compromise? Now that's chapter 12. Would you believe it, in chapter 20, you may as well rewind your VCR and play the exact same tape again. Except this time it's Abimelech, king of Gerar, who meets the beautiful sister of Abraham. It's interesting to notice that in both stories, it's God who actually has to come down and help Abraham, who'd been trying to help him, God. And God bails him out both times. Backing up just a few pages, we see what's really the saddest segment in this Abraham helps God out trilogy. chapter 15. God promises Abraham that he's going to be the father of a great nation. In fact, this is his third such announcement. Genesis chapter 12. I will make you into a great nation. Chapter 13. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth. Chapter 15. Look up at the heavens and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. So shall your offspring be. Now let me repeat myself. Abraham trusted in God. He's one of the great Hall of Faith fellows from Hebrews 11. But when things get really difficult, when it's the bottom of the ninth inning, then Abraham decides that he needs to help God out. So in chapter 16, Abraham and Sarah concoct a plan. Sarah loans her maidservant to Abraham for the evening, and they decide to build this promised empire through Hagar and her son Ishmael. And this one human move sets loose a chain of events that is one of the biggest Old Testament messes ever recorded. Isaac versus Ishmael. And we see the same tragic pattern ensuing where God has to reach down and rescue Abraham, who's trying so diligently to rescue God. Let me take you very briefly to just one other Bible story of man helping out God. Genesis 3 is such a quick, abbreviated snapshot of this planet's fall into the pit of sin. Eve ate the fruit. She gave some to Adam. He ate too. Case closed. But it's when we look at Adam's fall that we see a tragic moment of human rationalizing. Eve, you see, Eve had been deceived. The serpent had tricked her. Not so with Adam. You can read that in 1 Timothy chapter 2. When Eve came to Adam with that fruit in her hand, he knew in an instant that she had fallen prey to the very enemy God had warned them about. With a stab of pain in his heart, he realized that his beloved, beautiful bride, this woman given to him from the hand of the Creator himself, had been ensnared by the foe. I appreciate so much an old commentary entitled Patriarchs and Prophets, where this ancient story is beautifully applied. The author E.G. White describes the war that raged in Adam's heart. He knew his wife had sinned and that the penalty for sin was death. God had said so. But here was his precious wife, his partner in life, the only other human companion on the entire planet. If God took her, he'd be alone. Losing her would rip his heart out. He couldn't bear that. And so Adam, with his eyes wide open, with the clear warnings of God ringing in his mind, reached out and took that piece of fruit and deliberately took a bite out of it. Let me make a vital confession. I don't know what God might have done if Adam had stood true to his obedience. Would God have sent Jesus down to die just for Eve, a Savior sent just for one person? Or could God have created another being to be Adam's partner in life? What were God's options at that moment? Well, all of these are moot questions, of course, because Adam did what he did. But here's my point. Adam didn't believe that God could save the situation. God couldn't provide for Adam's needs. God couldn't heal the ache in Adam's heart. At least Adam didn't think so. And so Adam decided that he would have to take matters into his own hands. Rather than trust in God to care for this monumental dilemma, he took that fruit in his hand and he tried to create his own answer. And so now for 6,000 years, God has been helping out the sons and daughters of Adam, who in this case was trying to help himself. Question: does this principle apply in some way to your life? Are there ways in which God has said to you, trust me on this, live in obedience to me, and I'll take care of you? But in the back of your mind, you can't help thinking, I'll gladly trust you, except for this, and this, oh, and this. Just in these couple of areas, Lord, I really need to help you out. You know, when I ministered back there as director speaker at Voice of Prophecy, we were thrust into a trusting relationship every single day of the year. For 95 years, the Lord provided for the radio broadcast ministry. But I have to confess something to you. Every now and then, our treasurer would come into my office and say to me, Lonnie, our male income last month was down $80,000. Or Lonnie, we're running a good $200,000 behind where we were last year. We've got to do something. And I'll admit that sometimes I was tempted to waver in my trust relationship with God. I know all about the 95 years. I've seen God provide during past crises. But sometimes as I drive home, I would feel those words of financial warning digging away at my insides. $80,000. And I'm just telling you very openly, there have been times when I forgot to keep trusting God. Subconsciously, I began to think to myself, this is the big one. I better come up with something. I'm so thankful that God forgives me for such moments, and even sometimes for long days of failing to trust. He waits right there while we hack away at our jungles of doubt and despair. And then when we finally cry out to him in our confused jungles, he says, Lon, I love you. I'm right with you. And look, my freeway's right over here. Full speed ahead. And so let me say this in closing. Have faith in God in times of greatest doubt. Have faith in God with crises all about. Have faith in God when tempted to help out. Have faith, dear friend, in God.